Check this out. In just seconds, I can automatically generate hundreds, even thousands of fully customizable presentations. This has been a total game changer for us. What used to take 8 to 16 hours manually and even 4 hours with ChatGPT is now just taking a couple of seconds. In this video, I'll explain how we can generate Google Slide presentations from a single homepage using AI. In our case, we use Airtable. We'll create a form that will serve as the trigger. This form isn't necessary, but it simplifies what we have built. So the first thing we have is the homepage. We can gather homepages and just need the brand name and the homepage link. That's it. Then we need a form to input the brand and the homepage. With AI and some automation, everything important is generated for you. We use ActivePieces as our main automation tool. Here we have a trigger from Airtable that sends an HTTP request, pulls the text from the homepage, removes the tags, transforms it into a presentation format with the help of make.com. But keep in mind, I'll make it as beginner friendly as possible, so even without experience, you should be able to rebuild this. Why do we split between Make and ActivePieces? I'll explain also. For now, all you need is a template with variables. You can check different homepages that sell those templates, which we will not cover in this video. It's just about the principles we apply, and you can use whatever works for you. In our case, we will use Airtable. So your table starts like this, probably if you are starting from scratch. We can discuss certain things. I can guide you through the beginning. If you have been starting Airtable, then skip this part and go and watch from there. But for those new to Airtable, you have to know, like, we have here different field types, which I'm not explaining. There are plenty of good tutorials out there. There is one thing I would recommend everyone new or not new, and that is changing the first field here into a formula field. But in order to do that, we need first a brand name. I have created here already some examples. So let's just go and have a right split. And now we have here the fields. What we need in first place is the brand name. That's a field we definitely need, everyone from us. Now, for the rest, we can take this out as we do not need those yet, so we can delete them. And the next thing we need is the ID. So we have here the auto number. And now when we have those two fields, like the name and the ID, we can start to create the formula. So all we need now is the brand name and the ID, and we want to split those. So now it's basically giving me here a name, but it has a unique ID in front of the name. So let's just say our brand name is ARC. Now we have here the brand name, and then you can of course always change the formula if you want to do micro adjustments. All you need now are the next fields, which are listed here. Now, that would take quite a long time to rebuild this one, and it's also a quite boring process. But all you need to know is think about all the fields you want to extract from this brand. Of course, you need the homepage. This is like the most important item. For this, you can use the URL field, but for the rest, you need a long text field. Okay, so you need the homepage, but then you need something like about the brand, visions, missions, target audience, social media. It depends really what you need, everything to extract from the brand. This is up to you. The next thing is, like in our case, we have been using it for brand proposals. And in my example, we can see that unfortunately, I can't show this table. So we have a table, all shows. And in the shows, we can then select here a show. And then we have like data coming from this table. So in this case, we have an AI analyzing our content and writing a little summary, what has happened over the last 28 days, like the view count and the hours watched, subscribers gained from this channel here, and then the demographics and so on. Now we take this information, because this is super important for us. We take this information and combine it with the information from what we get from the brand. Then it matches basically like an in-depth analysis why we should work together. We want to keep it simple. So what we would do instead is like maybe just an About Us section. That's all you need. Okay, you have the homepage, you have your fields you need. So for example, let's just keep it simple, about the brand, and now about yourself as well. Now, what you need to do is, again, for everything, I would recommend just a long text field. It's the simplest. And even like for categories, keep it simple for now, long text field. If you want like multi-selects, that's a bit more complicated. So the next thing is you need something for yourself. So here in this case, about us. And then you have to split the information you need for the presentation itself. So in this case, here, all those fields. So I have prepared this a little bit already here, and this is how it's looking. So let's check it. We have here all the fields like we extract from the brand itself. Then we have the About Us text. Like in our case, it's a bit different from the original. And then we need to split those small segments into segments. And I'm explaining now why. So we need to think of it like segments. So when we look at this one here, we have the variables. So you need to create variables, and it depends a little bit on what segment you create them. But keep in mind that the variables cannot be adjusted on like the length of the text. So that means like you have to be exactly aware of this one. So for example, if you are using a title that is maybe too long, keep in mind that it's not working, or you need to think about the character size. So once you have the template, which you can design however you like, you can also adjust and apply as many variables as you like, but it has to be those double brackets here, and inside the variable name can be big, small, whatever, like views, hours. You can really integrate anything you like here. The only thing, again, you should keep in mind is the character length itself. Like you want to be specific on how long you want those variables to be. So when we go back, that's what you then need to think about. Like what variables do you need? Now this can take a little bit time. So in total, I spent around 4 to 5 hours. But again, the amount of time you are saving is just insane. So I would say it's a super useful tool. The next thing you need to do, and this is something everyone needs to do, is you need a presentation ID and then a shared link formula. So the formula is something looking like this here. You can just copy and paste it. It's quite simple. You need this in front and the presentation ID as the variable, and this here after the presentation ID, so that you have a shareable presentation link. So now we have the database, we have all the necessary fields, we have the shared link. That's all you need. We can actually start now. For our example, we need hustle butter, you can use any as example. So let's just go and start with the automation. Again, we could use make.com to do everything, but to keep it a little bit simpler and be also more affordable, we are using ActivePieces for the first part, like this one here. And then we go and use make for the second part, which is just creating the presentation itself. So when we go to ActivePieces, this is the big overview, but let's start from scratch. Let's just split the view here. We need a trigger. In our case, we can use Airtable. And the good thing about ActivePieces and compared to make.com is we do not need a webhook. So that's the same principle as you would have in Zapier, which really makes it so much easier, because then you do not need to create a link, create a script, and so on. You can just use this one. It has a lot of cons. It doesn't have as many modules as make.com, for example. But again, in this case, it's like doing everything until the Google Slides presentation. If they would offer here Google Slides, I would also use Google Slides here. So let's change the trigger here to Airtable. Select the base. Forgot already the base name. Let's just copy this one here. Select the table. Now what you want to have is a specific view. Let's just create a new view. Let's just name it create input. And now we have to filter this view. So everything that has been checked, of course, you can adjust this one, whatever and however you like it. So you could, again, use the homepage field as the trigger field, but for this one, you can just use the check field here. And what we want to have, because otherwise it would just create unlimited automations, is that it stops when there is something inside, for example, this one here about the brand. So what we need here is then another filter, and that is about the brand. When this one is empty, it should basically disappear. So we can check this one here, and now it's here. As soon as this one is filled with something, it should disappear, because we do not want this in create input view. We could create something similar, another view, for example, here. Let's just call it done. But this time we do the opposite. Now, when the input is done, we see the results here. And this is like our view for everything that is basically done. When we go back to ActivePieces, we can select the view. Let's just refresh this one. So create input. Let's load sample data. It should be here we have it, hustle butter. And now all we need is to get the information. So for this one, just make this smaller. We need an HTTP module. You can also use the code module, but the HTTP is a bit simpler. So all you need to do is to send a request and choose the get method and paste the L coming from the Airtable base. Here we have the L. Let's test the data. The problem though is like this data contains or is super huge. You can look here on the side and I could scroll forever. This is like a huge file because there is so much nonsense you do not need. With nonsense, the HTML code. Technically you could use and skip this part, but if you want to save some money, just have another module, and the module here is the text helper. Of course, you have the same module in Make.com, so you can rebuild this one quite simple there. And all you need to do is like remove HTML tags. Here you need to insert the HTML content. Let's test this one. And here you go. Now it's way shorter, perfect for AI to analyze the data now. So now let's just copy what I have built already here. All we need is like the data from the homepage, but in a more usable way, because this one is also too long and also not precise enough. There are so many things we do not need for our use case. So you could use OpenAI, Claude, whatever, but I prefer, as on some of the other videos, Trico, as you can change the model super quick and easy. You can ask the AI here, select your account and choose the model. This is something whatever you prefer, either the Claude 3.5 or GPT, the new version, GPT 4.0. Both are good. I'll keep it to Claude for now. Now you can use just this prompt here, which is quite a long one, or no, the next one is the long one, sorry. So I'm not writing this because that takes the most time. Like building all that stuff is quite simple, but to have a prompt that is working good, that takes a lot of time. For the brand information, I just saw I'm only using the mini model. So maybe that makes also sense. Let's just do something in between because this one is not that expensive. So let's just take the same prompt here, copy this one. What I'm doing is extract all the information. You're an whatever expert, and all I need is a JSON file after this one. So we have the input here. So let's just copy it, input. And of course here we have to select then the input, for example, this one here. But now the next thing is super important. You want a JSON output, and you need to give the AI an example. Now, it's not always giving you the perfect output, but most of the time, or I would say 95%, it's giving you a decent JSON output. The advantage of doing it this way is you do not need like multiple AIs to get all the brand information, but you can just run it once. The AI is extracting everything you need, and you can go and use that for the next step, because now you have then to separate those information into single fields. Let's just run this one and test this one here. And here you go. You have the JSON with the output for about the brand, the vision, mission, contact information, category, target audience, social media, and everything you need. You can extract more and you can adjust it to your liking. All you need to know is like the output must be as specific as possible based on what you need here. The next thing is you need to extract those single items. For this, we need a code module. You can use also another module, but the code module is super flexible and you can adjust it and you can extend it as much as you like. And I think this is like one really big advantage over Make.com, because you do not need anything external. It's like in an internal mod, you do not need to pay for another service. Here you need like an input. So you can just copy this one, input text, and take like the input from the step before. Here, ask AI. Let's just rename this one here. So that's also easier, brand info. And now we can take the input from the AI. And this is now more complicated maybe. Let's just take it and paste it. So you have the full code. You can do a screenshot. It's basically just taking the JSON file and breaking it down into those single items here so that we can extract the data and fetch it into Airtable. Here we can just copy the full code and let's see if it's working. As you can see, we have now 7 items. So instead of having one output like before, like this was one single text, we have now 7 items. So we have the about, we have the mission, we have the contact number, and so on. Now what we need is like the brand alignment. Now this is super personal and it's quite a long prompt. It took quite a long time to prompt this one, but let me just copy this entire prompt here. Let's paste the prompt here. So the prompt is just doing a brand alignment. This needs to be adjusted, of course, to your liking. So in our case, we just have the YouTube show name, the statistics of our YouTube show, the demographics, the description. That's our input, but that's something you have to adjust. Here you can input, let's say, something about your brand, and then the input that is coming from the brand itself. Because again, all we want here is an alignment between us and the brand. What and why do we match together? So here we have all the things we need from the brand that makes, at least for us, a little bit sense. And then here a detailed description on what we need. So when we go back to the automation, that is for the brand alignment. So we can just copy again the same prompt, which we can just use from here. So for this, we will use Trico again. Choose the model. I would prefer the strongest model. So Claude 3.5 has always worked good for us. Let's just see if we can copy the whole prompt. Looks good, but let's test this one also. It's not working because it pulled information out of nowhere. We have to connect this one. Let's build the connection. Let's keep it simple for now, as this is only for demonstration purposes here. Input and about us. And let's pull the information here from Airtable about us, and we haven't filled anything yet. Let's do that first. For that, we can just use ChatGPT. Write a dummy about us text. Let's take this one here as a dummy text, copy this one and paste it into our Airtable base. So imagine that's something you would like to add. Let's keep the name at YouTube. We are a dynamic company. Now let's go back and test the automation again. So now we want to reset it again, and hopefully we have the about us. Here we go at YouTube. And if we ask the AI now, we can bring in the input. So our about us text. And now we want the input of the brand. Here we have, of course, our separated values. And now let's just bring and put the value here, input of the brand. Let's just say about the brand and paste here the about section, vision. And let's just pull one more thing, and that's kind of the target audience. Everything else, of course, needs to be adjusted. Now let's just pull that one. If you like, you can add the USP or whatsoever. Let's reset and test this one out. Here we go. The output looks decent enough for now. Again, we need to adjust this one, but we have everything we need. We have the strategy here for Hustle Butter, and it's for our YouTube showcase here as the brand. This is perfect. We have a quite long and decent text here. That's fine enough. Again, like maybe the content itself doesn't make sense, and maybe the AI is also confused because now it thinks it's the real YouTube and not the fake about us YouTube brand. Let's just move on to the next prompt here. For this one, we could just use Trico. You can do that, or you can duplicate it. So you have the same model, and you can, of course, then change the prompt. That makes it also quite fast and efficient. Let's analyze the next prompt. So here's the next prompt. That took, I think, the most time writing the prompt, because again, that's something that is adjusted to the presentation. Like, you need to know what segments you need. In our case, we need like those segments, the introduction, why they should work with us, reason for partnership, the why reason number 1, why reason number 2, why reason number 3. So you can just copy the prompt here, but I think it's not pretty useful. You have to adjust this one here. And of course, now this is also really important here. And that is that you need the JSON output here in this format. Now, this is important because that's what we want ultimately. Now, we could, of course, have used like multiple AIs. For example, one AI could write the first part, and the second one could write the first, and then the second one, the second part. And we could extend this like quite a lot. But in our case, we wanted to have like one AI having one context. So the problem, if we would have like two AIs, would be it would need the context from the first AI, otherwise it wouldn't, or it could repeat itself. So therefore, one AI for us in this case worked better. For this one, of course, we need also a powerful model. Choose like also Claude 3.5. Nothing I would save here, as this one is the most important part. Now let's copy the whole prompt here and paste this one, test this step. In the meanwhile, let's just change the name here. And sorry, the brand alignment was not there. Let's just insert the brand alignment and let's do it again. So this is just for the format, and of course, like now extract the information from the brand alignment and do the format in the JSON format. You could try to merge those two together if your presentation isn't that long or if you don't have a lot of input. But if you try to have everything under one prompt with the JSON, with the brand alignment, the AI might get confused. So breaking it down into sub-steps, at least for us, is more helpful. Okay, so here we have now the output. This is looking great. As we can see, we have those single outputs, but this is still one output. The next step, same step as before, we just need to extract those single outputs here. Let's just do the same thing as before. What we need here is again the code piece, and we can then input the text and take the format from the step before and just paste this code here, which I can also share. Let's just take the code here so you can do a screenshot. It's doing technically the same thing, but because sometimes it failed here and there, we had to make sure that we brought in certain things. Now, one thing you can do is take a screenshot and basically ask GPT to adjust it to what you need. For example, if you have other fields, just tell GPT and it's already doing a decent job. I think if you have the full output here, you should be fine. So let's take the full code and let's see if it's working. It's working. It didn't work before because I copied it from this other table, but when I've copied this prompt here into this section, it actually worked. Let's double check it. I have not changed anything here. As we can see, we have 11 items. This is perfect. And now all we need to do is, of course, fetch all the data into our Airtable before we move to the next step. Now we move to Airtable. And of course, for that, we need the Airtable piece. For this one, we just need to update the field. So here we go and choose Update Airtable record, connect it again with Airtable, choose the base, choose the right table, and the record ID is coming from the very first step. So we can close this one here as we don't need it. All we need to do now is connect all those items here, all those items into those fields. There's only one thing which I mean, there are of course other things as well, but there is one thing I don't like about ActivePieces, as I don't know why, but you have to unfortunately input every single field from the step before. Otherwise, it will rewrite it on some certain fields. Like on make, for example, you do not need to do that. You just put the fields you really just want to update. Everything else will be untouched. So let's do that quick. And the first fields are coming from the first record, but then take care. Those fields are generated. And as we remember from the step before, this one is coming from the code piece. Keep in mind, if you use make.com, you have something similar. You have like a similar module which you can use, not the code piece, but a text phraser. So here we can just add everything we need, contact information. Let's skip those parts. Let's just input the most important items here. And now about us, unfortunately, in some cases, it's deleting. So we want to be sure, input everything. The in-depth analysis, we have not split this one, so we can just take the number 6 module, insert the full module, and now we can split this one here with the why should we work together, and that's coming from the code piece. So now why should we work together? Reason number 1. Oh, the introduction is missing here, but it's fine. Reason 1, reason 2, audience, brand, integration, opportunity, benefits, and so on. And should you miss one field or if it's not there, you can of course go back to Airtable and adjust this one here. Let's just say you want to add the intro. You can add the intro, go back to your ActivePieces and just refresh this one here. And here you have the intro, and let's just bring in the introduction and let's test this one out. Test successful. We have the output. Let's see and go to our Airtable. And as we can see, as we have done it before, we filtered this view here, and in this view we only see everything with the check mark and if it contains here something inside the About Us section. You could, of course, do a status field and change the status then inside of ActivePieces, but I think that should be clear here. And as we can see, we have everything now. This is perfect. All the single lines. Okay. And now let's just move on to the next step. And that is going to make again inside of ActivePieces. Unfortunately, otherwise I would build everything entirely in ActivePieces. There is no slides. So if we go here, as we can see, there is nothing. So when we go to Google, we have those pieces, sheets, calendar, but no slides. So therefore, to make it simpler, we go to Make.com here. Now in Make.com, we have to keep in mind that we have to use either a timer or a webhook. If you use a timer, keep in mind that, for example, if you leave it to every 15 minutes, it takes every 15 minutes 1 credit down. So if you're not using it at all, that is consuming a lot of credits. Therefore, if you are not using it every single day, you might want to use a webhook, which is way more effective and also way faster, because then you get the response immediately. This is how it's looking. Let's just align this one here. We have a simple webhook. So you can just go and create your hook here, add your webhook. You have to copy the webhook here. And if you do not know how to use the webhook, that's no problem. Just ask ChatGPT. For example, if you use Airtable, then choose the webhook here and just ask Airtable, write script for Airtable. So we do not need everything. It can just send a record ID and GPT should be able to write the script. If not, I'll provide one dummy script. So as you can see, it's working. And now you just have to paste this one into Airtable. So you can use again like that from Airtable, or here is a very simple webhook automation, and all it's doing is like sending the record ID. That's it, nothing else. So we can take this one here, adjust it, and if you need any console log, you can of course take that GPT version. That's fine. Now all we need to do is go to Airtable. Under automation, we need to set a condition. We could say like every time presentation ID is empty but conclusion contains something, then send the trigger, just as an example here. Okay, so for that we could just go and create automation. So table condition conclusion is not empty and the ID is empty. And when we look for a record, we should see this one. This is perfect. So every time when the automation is running and the automation is completed, then it starts to kick in. Why? Because it fills this field, and if it's if it contains something, the other automation kicks in. And here you see already like why I prefer ActivePieces in some cases, because I do not need to create a webhook. That's a step I save. So here I just need to run the script and paste this one in, change the name of the base here of the table. So let's just copy this one, edit the code. Again, I'm not a coder myself, and if I can do it, everyone can do it. So here we just need to paste the name and change it, of course, with the value coming from the step before. So here we need the record ID from the step before. And let's just test this action here. Now it's doing nothing, of course. Why? Because our automation is not yet on. Here we go. We have the record ID. That's the only thing we need. Why? Because on the next step, when we put the Airtable field or Airtable module, we can get the record here. Now, all we need to do is, of course, connect our base, select the table and the record ID coming from the step before. And now let's just run this one here one more time, test the action here, and let's just put this together. Here we go. We have all our data here. Okay, this is looking perfect. So the next module here, you need again a template, and to make sure that it's working, you need to add those values. So if those values are not set, it's not working. So make sure you work first on the template, and let's assume you have the template done. You have every value you need, every slide, and it's then ready to go. You can add as many slides as you want. You can add as many values as you want, and you can literally play around and do whatever you like here. So let's just add now our next module, and that's the Google Slides. We have here different things, but we choose the slide from a template slide. And here we can then choose. So now all you need to do is choose the path where your template is located, and you have to select the drop down here. And now you can technically start already. All you need to do is to connect all your variables here. So YouTube and then X, the brand name, or in our case, Corp. Although the brand name makes no sense because it's actually like here, Hustle Butter. So let's just change this one. Let's just make it right. Otherwise, there might be a confusion because here we have the name Hustle Butter. So we need the presentation, of course, to have the same name. Let's connect everything here. So X, and then you can, of course, name it however you like. For example, your brand name and then the brand name you want to connect with. And now you can just add everything you need here. For example, the brand name, the introduction, and if you have many fields, you can just type in and search for the fields here. Intro, audience, why we should work together, reason 1, 2, and 3. And all those stuff like views, hours is coming from the template. We do not need those stuff. All we need is another brand here. And what else do we need? The value. Okay, do we have that? Yes. And the conclusion. Here we go. Now all we need is connect another Airtable base and update the record with the record ID, but then also if we have a status field. So here we want to update the record, connect it with the right base, choose the table, of course, and whatever updates you want. In our case, we can leave actually everything blank, only the record ID. It's something we need, and then the presentation ID. And that's all we need. Everything else is something not relevant. So let's just save this one here. The new document location, wherever you want it. Of course, down here you can use. Let's test this one out here. And now let's run the automation. Remember our trigger. In our case, if this here is empty and this here is not empty. So first we take everything out. And delete. So now it's empty. And let's just see at right split. Okay, so as you see nothing, but as soon as I paste something, it should run. Let's test this one out. Okay, now it has something inside, and here we go. It triggers automatically. It generates a presentation. It should then input a presentation ID here, which we then use. Here we go. And now we have the presentation ID. Now in our shared link, we should have the finished presentation. Let's go and check if it's working. Here we go. We have the Hustle Butter. It's there, and some certain things did not work here, like brand benefits to brand. That's something we forget to input, but everything else is working perfect. So we have here X Hustle Butter. We have a conclusion. We have the tattoo industry here and everything we need. So this is looking awesome. And now you can extend. We have 10 slides. If you need 30, go ahead. So here we can then literally do whatever you like. Add the integration opportunities again, like we didn't put this one here, but we have everything from the introduction to the conclusion. It's working. We have the name, of course, like here we need to change the template. That's like coming from the other template here, your name. And yeah, actually it's working. So before we end the video, let's just summarize what we have did. As we know, like every automation needs any kind of a trigger. In our case, we did it manually. Of course, you do not need to do it through a form. That's up to you. And after that, we analyze everything from the company to the in-depth analysis about us and write a segment separation through AI. And after that, we created a presentation. Quite simple automation. It really doesn't take that much time in compared to what you save. And the most time is just the prompting itself. Everything else, like the presentation, the automations itself, that takes 10 minutes to 15 minutes. If you are really focused, that is so quick. Just the prompting takes time, and that's something you have to figure out. So I hope this video was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to leave the prompt in Google Docs. See you on the next one.